Or I can leave the meeting, right?
This is your chance.
All right, Jesse, whenever you're ready.
Okay, so I guess we can call the meeting to order, but we can't confirm quorum, correct?
Yeah, I'll call the roll though, and we'll just do it officially.
Sure.
Okay, Chair Jesse Moles-Airing,
Here.
Vice Chair Lisa Frazier,
Present.
Carl Cuthbertson is not here yet. Chelsea Gailey.
Present.
Hi, Chelsea.
Hey.
Cole Kinworthy.
Here.
Andrew Landstrom is not here yet. Brianna McCormley is not here yet. And Jason Pattison cannot be here tonight. And our town board rep ex officio Rob English.
Present. Here.
We do not have a quorum. We do have a guest, Richard von Furstenberg, who is applying for a vacancy on the Parks and Rec Board and is just attending tonight to see how the meetings go. So that is the other face you see on the screen. We can proceed with just non-official actions and updates and work our way through the agenda. Hopefully we'll be joined soon by others.
So Stephanie, without the quorum, do we still submit changes and approval to the agenda and minutes from the last meeting?
No, we'll just skip right on through the minutes. We'll do them next month when we have it done.
Okay, I assumed as much. Just wanted to make sure. Can we discuss the future projects and prioritization, master plans, and community connectivity plan updates?
Yeah, I'd like to do that if you guys don't mind. I know we're a small group tonight, but since we're here anyway, I did include in your packet a spreadsheet. You guys will remember back at our June, I had asked about what kinds of things you guys are sort of hoping to accomplish in this year ahead. Of course, last year was so bizarre with the COVID pandemic, and we didn't meet very frequently, and of course budgets were cut at the beginning of the pandemic just so that we could be really careful, not knowing what the impacts of the pandemic would be. I think that, you know, it's been a strange year all around. We are back to sort of our normal operating budget for the year, but because we didn't meet very often and because we sort of got off, you know, kilter last year, I thought it would be a good time to just check in with you guys and take your temperature for what you really kind of want to accomplish this year within our normal budget. And then I have a couple other projects I want to kind of just get your feelings on. So in your packets, we have some new members and it's also been a while. I put together a little spreadsheet that just outlines what projects we've done recently in each park, what projects are funded and upcoming right away, and then what projects I recommend that we work on. So I don't know, Jesse, if you want to go through that spreadsheet, or if you want me just to summarize it, what would be best?
It's up to all of you. I can probably share it, pull it up so that we can all see it. Let me see if it lets me do. Let me know if you all can see this.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Thank you for pulling it up. So I'm going to go just kind of through, let me remind you first of all that each of our parks has a master plan, right? And in those master plans are recommendations for improvements. We've made quite a bit of progress on our master plans, and that's really why I wanted to take just a couple minutes tonight to review the progress that we've made and then talk about what's left to do from those master plans. So I'll just kind of go through each one. In Kate's Creek Park, of course, we put in the pollinator garden, which was an enormous project, replacing all of that old riprap for 200 linear feet of ditch with sort of a rain garden, pollinator garden, which is really thriving at the park and has become quite an amenity, in my opinion. We were also able to do plantings around the playground area. That was a tree board initiative, but it was in line with the master plan. So we're getting a lot better just vegetation, plant material, shade, and beauty at that park. We added the compost blankets to 4 sides of the slopes around the soccer field and along the road's edge. You'll remember that those used to be very eroded, compacted soils. And with the compost blankets, we were able to plant native grass and seed mixes, which have also flourished and really improved the soil quality along those 4 areas. We had an Eagle Scout who put in a little library that was hand built for the park. And of course, last year we added the musical play stations, which I think are loved by all. I don't know, maybe Cole can tell us how the little school kids are enjoying those musical play stations. You're on mute, Cole.
They are, it keeps people engaged. It's a fun new addition. And it brings joyful noises.
That's awesome. Those you'll remember, you guys are an accessibility project. I mean, they are intended for children of all abilities and adults to be able to use. So upcoming here in the very near future, I'm working with the stormwater division to put in an above ground cistern to collect rainwater from the roof, which we'll be able to use for irrigating the plantings. And this is really a perfect place for an above ground cistern from an educational standpoint, because it's going to be so visible to the public. We can explain what cisterns are. We can talk about rainwater harvesting, and it helps with just overall outreach about green infrastructure, which Kate's Creek Park has kind of become our green infrastructure park. So Terry Hackett and I are working together on that project, and it should be funded this fall. Hopefully we'll be able to roll it out very quickly and then use all of that rainwater to irrigate the gardens next year instead of using treated water from the spigot. I also have a bike rack for Kate's Creek Park. It doesn't have one yet, so that'll be installed soon. And of course, we have the volunteers from Torque and some of our and some residents from Waterstone that are working on the mountain biking trails. And in terms of recommendations, I would like to see recycling containers at the very least be added to the park. Right now we have trash receptacles, but not recycling. Any questions or thoughts about Kate's Creek right now? Or I guess I can go through everything and then come back. Yeah.
So Steph, you mentioned the educational sort of signage, but do we want to add that actually? So it's I know it's in your mind and in the plan, but is that something we want to add to that, or?
Yeah, no, thanks for bringing that up. I forgot to mention, so the signage committee, which is a whole different group that I work with, is doing a green infrastructure sign for Kate's Creek Park, but it's not funded until FY23, I think. So we'll work on the text and graphics this year, and then it would be fabricated after July 1st of next year. But it will explain sort of all of the green infrastructure improvements and also talk about wetlands and water quality in general. In the meantime, we'll put temporary signs up for the cistern. Okay, so moving on, and we can come back to any of these things later. Let me just try to get through the list as quickly as possible. Gold Park, we added a little library. That was Noah Mace, former Parks and Rec Board member, who built that library, and it gets a lot of use. We have added the musical play equipment last year, and of course the Bee Hotel was added several years ago, but is sort of a community art and an environmental and sustainability project. So it's nice when those two things can come together. It's a beautiful amenity, and the pollinator garden continues to be added to by the master gardeners of Orange County. One of the things that Terry and I are talking about doing in Gold Park this fall is compost blankets on the slopes that are between the building and the fence. Those are just eroded, compacted areas that don't grow grass. And it's just another place where we can sort of cease mowing operations by adding native flower and seed mixes like we did at Kate's Creek Park. So really any of the eroded or compacted areas in Gold Park, we'll be looking at adding compost and native seed mixes here in the short run. And then recommended, you guys will remember that we had a conversation about the schools doing art paintings that would be installed on the fence along Gold Park. And we got pretty far along in planning that project. And the month that we were set to deliver the materials to the I think it was 12 schools that had volunteered, is when the pandemic started. And of course, kids went virtual and things got real hard on teachers. So that is on hold until such a time that kids are back in the classroom and able to work on group projects. I don't know when that will be, but we do have some funding reserved for that and sort of a plan, for moving it forward when it is safe for everyone. And then you'll also remember we had the mega reforestation plan that the tree board worked on, which is converting some of the open areas of Gold Park to reforested, planned and reforested vegetation using native tree mixes that will provide shade, help with the heat index, and help address climate change. So that's really a sustainability and climate initiative. We have a plan for that, but we don't currently have funding for that project. It may be one that we can get grant funds for in the future or work in partnership with some other agencies. So in Turnip Park, we also, of course, have our little library. We have the chalkboards that are on the fence were added a couple years ago and get a lot of use. We have the new pollinator garden, which is also a monarch way station. We have the stream buffer plantings all along the stream, which were called for in the master plan. And we also just last week added public art. So I made the spreadsheet before, before we got the sculptures out there. But if you haven't been by to see, a gathering of women are 3 female figures made out of concrete and ceramic mosaic tile by Virginia Bowman and Linnell Davis. They were donated to the town, and the town board accepted the donation last week from the Woodburns family in Chapel Hill. And they are now in the park, seated right next to the butterfly garden, and just really, really beautiful. So please go by and take a look at those. Public art was also one of the recommendations in the master plan, and this situation just happened sort of perfectly in working with the Arts Council and the Arts Commission and the Alliance for Historic Hillsborough. Turnip Patch was identified as the best place for these ladies to come and visit, and they just look like they're out there having a great time gossiping and having a conversation. So they're fantastic. Recommended in Turnip Patch still is another picnic table. We've talked about a games area. There's an old concrete pad left over from a sculpture tour that was done years ago, and we thought, about doing a giant checkers thing or a giant Jenga, or just something on that concrete pad. We really need a pet waste station in that park. And then of course recycling containers. So we have trash receptacles, but not recycling. In Hillsborough Heights Park, we have, we've started on the pollinator garden. The plantings will actually happen later this fall, which is why plants are in the upcoming category. We just added a little library last week. That was Desi Parker, who's the Girl Scout that has presented to you guys about her plans to help us accomplish the Hillsborough Heights master plan. She built a little library. It's beautiful. It's been installed and she's stocking it with books now. I'm also working with the utilities department to put in a yard hydrant so that when we do put the plants in, we can water them. That is all stuff that will happen this fall. And then my recommendations for Hillsborough Heights Park are to replace the picnic tables that are there with new picnic tables, to add new benches, trash and recycling containers, a pet waste station, and then to start working on our master plan of adding swings to the park. So that is a much more expensive big ticket item, but swings tend to be they get more use than other types of play equipment. And it just, it's one of the recommendations in the master plan. So I'd like to, start working on getting that accomplished sometime in the next, year or two. In Murray Street Park, of course, we put in the bird park, which was a really significant amount of plantings. The entire hillside is planted, as well as the perimeters of the park. Most of those plantings are doing really well. We've been lucky with rain this year. If you haven't been by, go by and take a look. We're seeing, a lot of those plants are really starting to thrive now. There's a few that are struggling, and maybe we'll tree board may replace them, or try to take a little better care of them this fall so they can thrive. And my recommendations for Murray Street. Oh, I'm sorry. We've added a pet waste station there. It's actually the only one in West Hillsborough. So that was a really important thing to go ahead and add. And then we have the stream buffer plantings that were put in line with the master plan. In terms of adding amenities, really like to see some picnic tables and benches, trash and recycling containers, as well as starting to work on the pathway through the park. Swings are in our master plan for that park, and a little library. It would be another good site for a little library. In Kings Highway Park, we of course improved the parking area a few years ago. That was a massive project, a massive undertaking that has really paid off, and a lot more attendance at that park. We have trash and recycling containers there now that are emptied regularly. This fall, we'll be putting in the kayak launch and then the bio dock. That is a funded project. The building permit has been secured and the contractor has been selected. So keep on the lookout for that. But I'd really like to get a new picnic table. The one that's there is in pretty rotten shape. We had in our master plan a connecting trail through a part of the park that allows you to sort of circle back on the north side. I'd like to start maybe working with a volunteer group to put that trail in. And then of course we have a longer range plan for some interpretive signage of the Kings Highway roadbed and some of the other, the natural amenities of that park. We do need to also circle back sometime to the name of that park, because a couple years ago, this board, maybe before some of you guys were on here, but we talked about changing the name to Kings Highway Natural Area so that people kind of understand what type of park it is when they go there, that it's not really manicured or kept like our other parks, but it's intended to be more of a footpaths through the natural landscape and just a more naturalized area in general. So we may want to revisit that and think about petitioning the town board to change the name. On Riverwalk, we accomplished a tree ID program a couple years ago. That was a tree board project. We are working this fall on compost blankets on the slopes. There's one slope in particular up by the sort of observation platform where the picnic table is that's really compacted and eroding. So we'll be doing compost blankets and native seed mix there in coordination with the stormwater department. And then my recommendations are to start working on plantings along Riverwalk. We had always talked about adding some additional like flowering trees along Riverwalk as understory, but we didn't have a really good way to water them for a number of years. And so in an effort to save myself having to drag 5-gallon buckets, up from the river to water these trees, we now have a cart that we can drive to water the plants for the first year they're in. So it's one of the locations that I'm hoping tree board will consider this fall for their fall plantings project. And then I know you guys aren't really over cemeteries, but I just added this in really for, just to, my own accountability and to keep up with it, that our cemetery master plans also have some pedestrian amenities that are in there. And so that includes additional benches and pet waste stations, so that those sites can be, they can also be used, I'm not suggesting for recreation, but that when people are visiting, that they have a place to sit and that there are trash and recycling and a waste station there. We've already added one at the town cemetery, but the Old Town Cemetery and Margaret Lane Cemetery would be other good locations for those things. So that's kind of a snapshot of what we've been able to accomplish since we adopted the master plans. It's a lot, especially considering the constraints that we've been under. But, you know, we still have a lot of things out ahead of us. So I really just want to take an opportunity tonight to share that with you, and then hear what you guys think about these recommendations or any other ideas that have sprung to mind regarding any of these parks, especially from park stewards.
The connectivity aspect of all of this really stood out for me, from the Mountain to Sea Trail there at the Kings Highway, connecting to the already established Mountain to Sea Trail through the Riverwalk, and then that connects now to the Speedway and beyond, which is pretty cool. So any way that we could do that, and then, like, I guess I made some notes here. But everything that was on our master plan sounds good. The connectivity issue really stood out for me, as well as some of the more natural play elements. And all of the flowers. Oh my gosh, it has been great to see all the growth down there.
Yeah, I didn't really include connectivity projects on this list, but I'm glad that you brought that up, because they're kind of in a different category, but still really important to remember. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so, especially with the way the town's growing, and how many different areas of Hillsborough now have so many elements to it that people want to get to. So making it easier to access would be great. It's been really fun to see since I moved out here, just the growth of the Riverwalk itself, just seeing that inch along to now where it is. It's been really cool to see and then experience. And selfishly, as a field trip with the kids, there has been no shortage, especially in this pandemic time, just being outside and being able to walk. It's been great to explore Hillsborough in this way.
To piggyback on what Cole said, Stephanie, can you, and I know connectivity isn't really part of this, but in looking over the master plan for Kings Highway Park, it looks like there's a couple potential connections to West Hillsborough and also Occoneechee Mountain State Park. How doable is that?
Well, so our connectivity plan, the last update was in 2017. So it's time for that to be updated, because there's a lot that we've accomplished since 2017 that's not in the plan. But we're also doing a comprehensive sustainability plan, which will replace the connectivity plan this year. So rather than have you guys spend, 6 months updating the connectivity plan just to have it replaced, my plan, and this is kind of getting into the next part of the agenda item, but my plan is to have us focus on updating our connectivity recommendations and feeding them into the comprehensive sustainability plan, which will replace the connectivity plan. But to answer your question, Rob, the Allison Street CMAC sidewalk connected to the back access point of Occoneechee Mountain, and that is now complete. So you can get from downtown West Hillsborough, Gold Park areas to Occoneechee Mountain on that sidewalk now. But going from West Hillsborough to Kings Highway Park is very dangerous. We have a corridor sort of identified in the connectivity plan for where a path might connect. But the biggest problem is the railroad. So getting over, there's really only two ways to get to Kings Highway Park. If you walk on the roadside, well, you need a sidewalk all the way there. And of course, that goes outside of our town limits, which brings in all kinds of other complications about building a sidewalk. If you stay on the West Hillsborough side and follow and kind of go out Barracks Road or out even West King Street, you got to cross the railroad somehow. And that is a huge, almost insurmountable hurdle. I mean, just to be honest, like going over the railroad is very, very hard and very expensive. But we've never really conducted a feasibility study for making a connection to Kings Highway Park. It's always just been this board, doing the best we could with what we know, to identify ways that people might be able to walk there in the future. So doing a feasibility study of that and finding out if there is a path that is constructible, that's in, the town's jurisdiction, that can be maintained, if we have enough right of way, what kind of additional right of way might we need, and how much might a project like that cost? That's an exercise we haven't been through yet, and it may be time to do that. So yeah, back to the connectivity plan for a second. The recommendations, I don't know how long it's been since you guys have read the connectivity plan, but most of the recommendations are still very relevant. And I actually, in going through it myself, I haven't seen a lot of things that I would change in terms of recommendations. Mostly what needs to be updated is how much we've accomplished. And that is something that I can do another spreadsheet maybe next month and share with you all of the connectivity accomplishments we've made, and then show you kind of what's left to do. The town board is actually going to be talking about transportation priorities at their September workshop meeting, because we just have a plethora of bike and ped and roadway improvement projects that have lived, among us as being important, but not prioritized for a number of years. So one of the things that I'm going to work on at the September workshop is to set some priorities with the town board, and then I can share that back with you guys once that conversation happens. And all of this is intended to feed into the comprehensive sustainability plan, transportation and bike and ped sections. I also, while we're here, I mean, do you guys feel pretty comfortable with me just kind of working my way down this recommended list in terms of the funding that's available, seeing how far we can get with it this year?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, great.
The only thing I would add, Stephanie, if it's possible, is recycling bins wherever we can get them. I know you identified several parks, but I think any place that we have a trash receptacle, if we can get a recycling container, that would be good too. And a question with that, is that something that the town staff actually has to empty, or is that Orange County Solid Waste for the recycling?
We have a contract with Orange County Solid Waste for the recycling.
Okay.
And yeah, I agree with you, Rob. I think that wherever there's a trash can, there should be a recycling option. It may take us a while to get there because the receptacles that we buy are very, very well made, and they last a really long time, but they are also expensive. And so I might not be able to get them all right away. But within our just kind of normal general improvements budget, I think I can sort of schedule a couple benches, a couple picnic tables, a couple pet waste, and a couple recycling containers in every year until we have covered the parks and cemeteries and other sort of key public spaces.
And then the other thing is, and I know this is on your radar and stuff too, is any way that we can continue to get more public art in our open spaces and parks is, I think, awesome.
Yeah, it got me really excited working on those. We moved those sculptures with the Public Works crew last week. It was a really enjoyable day. And I think it brings a lot of, the art brings a lot of hope, right? In sort of dreary times. It's nice. We will have the River Park art going in starting this month. Okay. River Park is an Orange County park, but it's a project that was coordinated with the town, and using the wood from from our famous Calvin Street tree that fell a couple years ago, the red oak, which was the largest tree in town. So that's another really exciting project. We have a couple more murals in the works, and a sculpture tour coming up. So there's so many agencies working on public art now, it's almost hard to keep up. Whereas 10 years ago, we had none. And so this town is really seeing a renaissance of public art. It's so exciting to see. Let's see. The other thing I kind of wanted, while I had just a moment, I kind of want to talk to you guys about the skate park if you want to pivot, if you're
Yeah.
ready to pivot. Okay. So one of the master plans we did was the Exchange Club master plan, which of course is private park. And the master plan that we did for it was under the assumption that someday if the town were to take over that park, then we would need a master plan to guide development of that resource. But it's been a number of years and the town hasn't taken over ownership of that park. It is still privately held and maintained by the Exchange Club. As we worked on the master plan, it became apparent to me that there were a lot of improvements that would need to be made right away if the town were to take it. And these are improvements that have to do with safety and accessibility, security, parking. And when you add all of those improvements up, it becomes a very, very, very expensive project, which is why it hasn't moved forward. I think that the idea of having a skate park in town, for those of you who are new to this conversation, the town has been talking about a skate park since the 1980s. The first record I have of people asking for a skate park was in the 1980s, and it comes back in waves as adolescents who like skating and like scootering kind of get involved for a time and hope to get something accomplished, and then they sort of age out of the conversation, and then it gets quiet again for a couple of years. And we've gone through that cycle now probably 4 or 5 times. But the last time we went through the cycle with the skate park, we had over 200 signatures on a petition. And if you guys will remember, when Jason Pattison, our teenage representative on this board, surveyed the Cedar Ridge High School students, 90% of the people who answered that survey about having a skate park thought that it was a really great idea. So there's a lot of desire for a skate park in town, but Exchange Park is a really expensive proposition for that because of the bathroom, parking, lighting, security, safety, stormwater, the other things that would need to be addressed, which I'm not saying shouldn't be addressed, but I just want to maybe educate those of you who are new on the board. When we originally started looking for a site for a skate park, we evaluated about 15 different sites in town, and we had a scoring rubric that was very complicated, with about 50 different questions related to safety, visibility, accessibility, connectivity, all kinds of things. And I have all of this information I can provide to you guys. But when we scored these sites, Exchange Park was the highest scoring site by 4 points. And this is out of 100 points. The second highest site was Kate's Creek Park. And so Exchange Park had 76 points, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, and Kate's Creek Park had 72. So they were only, with all of these other scores that were added, they were only apart by a few. Well, we put all of our eggs in the Exchange Club basket for the last couple of years, but I'm starting to wonder if it makes sense to consider another site for a small skate park. And, using the same logic as before, Kate's Creek Park might be a good site for it. The area that we talked about putting a skate park back in the day was actually identified on the master plan as the space for the dog park, which is an old stormwater basin that was used during construction. It was like a temporary stormwater basin that was put into place, and it still has drainage in it and nothing, and it's a totally cleared area. There's no, I mean, it just needs to be mowed essentially.
It's access the unicorn trail right now is how it's referred to by the TLS friends. A lot of unicorns are hiding in there. And so when we hike through there to get to the soccer field and down behind, we are always in search for those elusive unicorns. So
Oh my goodness, I had no idea that there were unicorns living over there. So we'll have to keep that in consideration as we talk about this. And I'm not trying to change any minds tonight or anything. I'm really just trying to share what's been swirling around in my mind. As if you guys are still really interested in a skate park, then we might need to either go back to the drawing board and maybe go through the point system exercise again, or, you know, take a trip to Kate's Creek Park, talk about it as kind of the second runner-up, see if there are any constraints on that site that weren't considered before. I know that a skate park has been a priority for this board for many years, and I'm starting to feel like it might not be possible to do everything at Exchange in order to get us a skate park in a reasonable amount of time there. So I'll stop talking now. Yeah, Rob.
So one thing y'all can consider too is, well, let me back up. So in my hometown, they, instead of building one big skate park or one centrally located skate park, they decided to do like a half dozen really small cement bowls with different, you know, patterns or whatever too. So instead of being able to accommodate, you know, 25, 50 people at a time, they're much smaller in scale. It's half dozen to a dozen people. But if you think about the hardest thing is basically trying to build on property that's not our own. So if we can look at our parks that may be able to accommodate something on a much smaller scale, Gold Park, Kate's Creek Park, for example, that might be able to be accomplished much sooner than a giant one, kind of a, you know, one much bigger park. Just something to consider.
I love the location. It's got a great neighborhood with it, and the way that it's going with Torque working down there, it would just be a great sports area. You got your soccer fields, and then I saw in that master plan the idea of adding some other form of courts. But that could be a very active area with the trails that are already leading. That would be a really fun spot to put it. A lot of use, and then even if getting the town there was a problem, the circulator bus does run to Durham Tech, which is right up the hill. Be great reasons to hop on it for any high school kid that doesn't have the access, car-wise or any other reason.
That was going to be my only concern, was the connectivity, the walkability, or, you know, pushing over there instead of hopping in a car. But the bus is a good alternative.
And with the hope of more bicycle lanes in the future.
Yeah.
And a greenway connection. I mean, we do our next greenway connects from downtown past the train station around Collins Ridge and hopefully across 85
Wow.
to Beckett's Ridge Drive. So
that's the one that they're building that we talked about.
Well, Collins Ridge is building the portion that goes around the perimeter of their property. But if you look in our connectivity plan, I think we called it the North-South Greenway. It needs a better name than that.
Okay.
But that Greenway connection from downtown to Beckett's Ridge Drive would essentially be a pedestrian and bicycle, you know, connection. It's really not that far. But it's unfortunately right now, the only way to get from Beckett's Ridge and Cornwallis Hills to downtown is to walk along Turton Street, which doesn't feel safe for anyone. So a greenway connection, I think, would make that distance feel a lot shorter, because it wouldn't be crossing any roads and kids can, you know, run wild and free. But I do think that Rob makes also a good point that just if we do small parks in several areas, that might actually be better than one giant park, which would attract a lot of people from out of town and maybe swamp us swamp the park out with people coming from all over. A couple little small spots, which is, I recently visited, well, it's been a couple years now, Manio, North Carolina has 3 or 4 little parks around their downtown area, and you usually see just like 2 or 3 kids at each one. And if they get to one and there's a group there, then they kind of go to the other and spread themselves out in a way that might be a little bit more Hillsborough scale than something, enormous like the Apex Park or even Chapel Hill is a pretty big park in the area. If you guys like the idea of talking about the skate park idea again, one thought might be on the next agenda. I could share the old information with how we scored the sites before. And then we could, maybe go a little bit more in depth into this discussion when there's a quorum.
Sounds good.
I think it'd be fun to review the scoring and maybe update it if there's any changes. I was also going to add, I think Rob's idea is great. It also allows us to maybe scale a bit. We can start somewhere with a couple small things, and who knows when Exchange Club, if and when Exchange Club Park happens and it does end up with bathrooms eventually just as a park, and maybe we've got a couple skate parks proof of concept kind of in place, then we can move and add a slightly larger one there. But yeah, I think that would allow us to kind of do it in phases and show, prove the interest and get buy-in, and allow us to kind of scale up as we for whatever support we get for them.
Yeah, and skate parks are expensive. So even in talking about a small skate park at Cates Creek Park, we're still talking about a project that lands probably somewhere around $200,000. They're just very expensive, and it's because they have stormwater requirements. They're made of concrete, which is expensive. So they're not. It wouldn't be. It's still a big budget ask. I can't guarantee that we'll be able to pull it off.
I was curious too. I think at one time we talked, and I know this might be the timelines, longer, and this might be way outside of our scope for now, or not realistic to talk about. But I thought at one point we talked about the train station. Is there going to be possibly a space there that we will have a say in, or be able to develop?
The first phase of what's funded for the train station right now is just a road into the site, a parking lot, and the building for the train station. But that's because it's funded, through NCDOT rail and the transit tax primarily. But the town owns all of the property out there. The train station is only taking up a small part of it. So it hasn't been determined what the other uses of the rest of the site will be.
Gotcha.
That's something that the town board is still going to have to wrangle with in the future of what those other uses are. I can certainly see, especially all we've learned about the importance of public spaces during the COVID pandemic, I can see public spaces being incorporated in a meaningful way to any development site, that's going to be public for the town. But we haven't gotten that far along in the design yet. Mm-hmm.
Sure. Thank you.
I think we should examine all the possibilities as far as a skate park and not put all the eggs in one basket. Look at all the different possibilities and examine them.
That's great. What do you guys think about just holding our next agenda, diving back into the skate park? I can give a brief presentation about what the sort of previous group had gone through, the scoring rubrics, show you guys the different sites that were looked at, and then we can just kind of open up a dialogue about it. That would be good timing for me to do that ahead of the next budget, which starts in, my portion of the budget usually starts in November, December. So cool. I also just want to note back to the spreadsheet for a second that I listed some sustainability projects as also being that we don't really have a sustainability board. So Parks and Rec board is like our catch-all board for everything. You guys do it all. But you know, we have in the past talked about water bottle filling stations at the parks as opposed to water fountains. Or in addition to water fountains, we've talked about doing LED conversions of the site lighting that we have at the parks and also in the facilities. EV charging infrastructure is something that I'm working on creating a countywide plan for level 2 EV charging. Those are like the publicly available chargers, and some of our parks might be really well located and situated for that, especially Cates Creek, you know, being so close to the interstates. And then other solar projects, green infrastructure projects. And all of these sustainability projects are, you know, being driven by the town's clean energy pledge, which is to be 80% clean and renewable energy by 2030 and 100% by 2050. So we really, in order to meet that pledge as a town, that, you know, that's a government operations pledge, we really need to be looking for every opportunity we can to reduce our energy usage and to incorporate renewable energy and green technologies. So the parks are a spot. When we were working on our master plans, that wasn't incorporated, you know, quite as fully as I feel like it probably should be. And one of the things this board may need to do is revisit some of those master plans with the skate park conversations in mind and with the sustainability projects in mind, in terms of just adding some additional recommendations. I don't know when we're going to do this exactly. I think that this fall, I'm probably going to need you guys to focus on the skate park conversation and then helping with connectivity plan updates to feed into the transportation chapter of the comprehensive sustainability plan. That's probably going to be our workload for the fall, but maybe in the spring we can do just a brief review of our parks master plans. And you guys are also welcome to go ahead and start looking through those and generating, you know, ideas, so that when we come around to those conversations, you know, you'll already have your thoughts put together. That was mostly what I wanted to cover tonight. You guys have given some good feedback, and I'll just plan on adding to the agenda next month some additional information about the skate park conversation.
All right. I don't want to hold anybody up, but Rob, I had kind of a question for you, being that Fairview is in the Chapel Hill, but got to thinking about pickleball and if that has been any topic of conversation in and around this triangle. I know that it's growing in popularity, but didn't know if converting, you know, a court into a couple different pickleball courts was a thing that is possible, or that anybody has talked about in spicing up the different kind of games that we have available out here.
You're talking about Fairview Park?
Yeah, they've got 3.
So it's an Orange County park.
Orange County Park, not Chapel Hill Park.
Even though so Fairview is kind of interesting because it is part of Hillsborough, but then there's part that actually is outside, correct me if I'm wrong, Stephanie, outside the town limits. And the park that's there that has the tennis courts and the ball field and playground and stuff is a Orange County park. Okay. Pickleball is exploding, and it has been for last like 10 years and will continue to, because you can do a lot with a much smaller space. And so there is a big push to either convert tennis courts, 1 or 2. So say you have 4 tennis courts, to convert like one of them to 2 pickleball. So you can get 2 pickleball courts for every 1 tennis court. Okay. But you know, 2 doesn't do a whole lot. So people want 4 and 6 and right. more. But it's definitely a growing sport, and will continue to as we just get older as a society. And there's some pushback from, you know, hardcore tennis people, but honestly, a lot of hardcore tennis people end up playing pickleball as they get older too, and end up liking it. At first, they're protective of their tennis courts and stuff, but then they realize that they enjoy pickleball also. So, I mean, yeah, there's some good examples. Down at Chapel Hill does have a 6-court. We took we took 2 courts, tennis courts at Ephesus Park about 10 years ago and convert them into 6 pickleball courts. And it's, it's not enough. They're working on a 21 to 24 court complex thing at
wow.
a couple other sites, but it's everywhere. It's in Durham. It's in all of Wake County. Chatham's coming on strong with it now too. So yeah, it's definitely something to consider.
I think, isn't there pickleball at the Sportsplex?
There is.
Or it's coming?
No, it's at the Sportsplex. They're playing indoors, so they're using some of their basketball courts where they expanded, and they have dedicated pickleball at the Sportsplex indoors right now, both instruction and drop-in play and stuff too. But
Okay. Thank you for that.
But Fairview is another thing to consider, not necessarily for this board, but just there's a strong group in Fairview that wants a more walkable, safer Fairview community. And so it's not really a Parks and Recreation thing, but there's definitely some opportunity for improving walkability and accessibility in the Fairview community for sure.
Yeah, and some of those projects, Rob, will come in front of you at the September workshop.
Sweet.
Yeah, to think about from a bike and ped standpoint. Okay.
Thank you.
Were we all done with this spreadsheet for now?
Yes.
I'm gonna go ahead and stop that. See each other. Well, let's see what's next. Looks like Parks and Rec related reports. Are we going to do those?
Yeah, we can run through the reports quickly.
Looks like Rob, you might be up first.
Is it Kings Highway Park? I don't have the agenda in front of me. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm doing a town board.
Yeah, from the board. Yeah.
Okay. So we had several appointments this last week, a couple to the tree board and one to the Board of Adjustment. One of the big agenda items was some of you are aware, and all of you may be aware, but we've had a police substation in the Fairview community for a number of years. And there's been energy behind the community there to actually turn it into a community center for the Fairview community. And so the town board voted to do that several months ago, but we voted to rename that community center in honor of one of the longtime Fairview community members. So that was super exciting, and we're looking forward to, again, allowing the Fairview community to be able to utilize that more as a community center and community gathering place where they can actually do some programming and some meeting stuff. We're in the middle of figuring out the lease agreements and all the agreements that would need to take place for them to take over utilizing that more widely. There was a request for a Your Speed sign on Cornelia Street that the town board voted to move forward with. What else do we do? There's good, healthy discussion about our flagpoles and banners, and so that's an ongoing sort of continued thing. But we'll continue to look at how we can utilize mostly Duke power poles for our flags and banners, but we're pausing that for a time being. There was the police department has been looking for a site that they can do training and fitness stuff, and so they identified a site off of Millhouse Road that they are looking into potentially utilizing for future training and, again, fitness and having a site for themselves that they would lease for a couple of years. And there was a little bit of talk about returning to in-person meetings that we we paused because just the way that COVID is kind of moving right now. We're going to continue to be remote for a while. And that's about it in terms of town board stuff, but let me know if you have any questions.
That's great about the community center or community building in Fairview, especially. Does that mean that'll be converted? That the use of that building will be for the community, or in addition to the substation, or will that no longer be a substation?
No longer be a substation. So the police is
Wow, that's
mostly entirely moved out. You know, there were some specific things that that building was adapted to for the police department, but it would be turned over to the Fairview community to lease and to utilize for their, you know, for their own purposes.
That's great.
Yeah, and then part of that was moving the police downtown. So I think the majority, if not all, Margaret and Stephanie can answer when I'm wrong, but are downtown now in the main police headquarters.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Mhm.
I guess that brings us to, if no one else has any other questions for Rob, planning board.
Right. We did not have a meeting last month, so I'm looking forward to the one in 2 days. And I'll be able to give you an updated report next month on anything pertinent.
Sounds good. We'll hear from you next month. How about intergovernmental parks work group?
We also haven't met since the last meeting, since the June meeting.
Okay. Should we go through the steward reports? It's been a couple months. We can probably
Yes, please.
mention things. Yeah. Cole, you want to go first?
Yeah, is it Golden Park this up?
Yeah, Gold Park. I forget you're on too.
Yeah, where am I at?
No, you're fine. He said you
No,
have
you're good.
two.
I forget that you have two different parks, so I should have
Yeah.
specified. Gold Park's at the top of the list.
Nothing really to report. The benches we already spoke about. The soccer nets are starting to get extremely holy. I don't know where that falls in on us, but they're starting to look like they need replacing.
Okay. Helpful. I can honestly say I have not looked at the soccer nets at Gold Park in a long time. So I'm really glad you did. Thanks, Cole.
Oh, you're welcome. Those are the two things that have stood out. I wanted to send my thanks to you. The sanding that you did at Turnip Patch, the thanks made it back to me. They really appreciated their voice feeling heard as well. So thank you all around for that.
How about Kate's Creek Park? Has anyone else been there? I know that's Andrews, but has anyone else visited?
Yeah, I've been there a lot recently. We're working on the garden. It's that time of year where we have to take out all the weeds and prune everything, and sort of, you know, the summer growth has gone wild. So that's our focus right now. And then of course working with Terry on the cistern project.
And I'd say the same thing for the soccer nets at Kate's Creek too.
Okay.
They probably are need to be replaced. So if you're making an order.
Thank you. Good to know.
How about Murray Street Park?
It looks amazing.
Good.
It looks amazing and green and lush. Just beautiful. Is those fig trees, fig bushes? Oh, they're
Yeah, and the Calicarpa, which is a beauty berry. I don't know if you guys know that plant, but it's got green leaves and then these hot pink berries all over the stem. They have really, really done well. Those and the fig trees are looking really good right now.
yeah, it looks lovely.
Nice.
It really does.
We'll be adding playground mulch there. All the parks will get playground mulch here over the next couple weeks.
Mhm, mhm.
What did you say that was? Calicarpa?
Calicarpa, beauty berry.
Beautyberry.
It will grow anywhere. It's great. It's
Oh, I have
amazing.
seen these. Yeah, very
Yeah.
cool. How about Kings Highway Park?
It's good. I was there a couple of weeks ago before we really kind of got any rain. So just like every creek and water, body of water in the area, everything's kind of low. And this time of year too, it just gets, well, especially with the rain, gets overgrown. But I didn't see anything that, really needed attention. That parking lot is, the improvements that we made to that over the years, it's really made a tremendous difference, I think. And I do see it, many more people out there utilizing it, or at least you can see the tracks and traces of people there. And then the biodock installation will be a huge kind of game changer for that area too. But I didn't see anything that needed attention.
So that reminds me that the hill on the parking lot that we cut has never done really well. That's another site we're thinking of for compost blankets.
Yeah, that's one that I did notice that too. I think that would be an ideal place for that too, for sure.
And I've got a group of 50 volunteers in September that are looking for a project, and we don't have that much litter in town, thanks to all the people who did litter pickups back in the spring. But one of the things I was thinking of having them do is go to Kings Highway Park and just sort of clear the trails, pick up sticks and rocks that are in the way and just kind of gently prune back some of the branches that may be overhanging. I don't know. I haven't been on the north side in a while. I don't know if you've been over there, Rob, but if you happen to go there sometime this month, just let me know if they could also pick up litter and just kind of clear, dead wood back and,
yeah, I think that'd be a great,
they can spread out.
I think that'd be a great project. One, just to get 50 more people out there that have never been there. But I will take some note next time I'm out there too. But yeah, okay. Those trails can always be, widened a little bit.
Yeah.
Really excited about the biodock and the kayak launch too. That'll be great. What I've seen or I've heard and I kind of have an idea, but I was curious about the compost blankets too. Is the idea that it suppresses, kills weeds, but also lays down a layer of nutrients, or is it?
Yeah, so compost blankets is a really fancy way of saying spreading compost.
Okay. Yeah.
And the what happens when you get, if this is an organic, like a vegetable based compost, so like leaf compost, it's not like a fertile, it's not poop. It's not a poop compost. It's vegetable compost. Mixed in with soil. And so when you put it down on the ground, essentially it allows microbial activity of the natural microbial activity of soil to start working through those under layers. And what we do is we use compost filter socks along the stretch of the slope at the toe of the slope, and then every, so and so feet up, and backfill it with the compost so that it doesn't run off in the rainstorms. And those compost filter socks kind of hold it in place. And then put the seed down. Over time, all we're doing is just adding good soil onto poor soil, because so many of those sites had their topsoil stripped off, and we're just trying to replenish it. Yep.
Gotcha. Very cool. Thank you.
Yep.
How about where are we? Hillsborough Heights. Cool.
Hillsborough Heights. It was looking pretty good. The project, the compost has been spread around with the mulch, so that's looking good. The one thing that stood out was the bush in the right corner that could probably use some trimming, but I think in the master plan, that whole area has it talks about the entrance getting a little.
And I did prune that bush this week.
Did you? Cool.
I did, because it was out of control. It had grown into the gate. Yeah, it was good. Thank you. No, thanks for seeing it.
That brings it to the Riverwalk. And as I mentioned earlier, I've been traveling a bit for the better part of the last few weeks. So it's been a little while. But I don't remember seeing anything. I remember at one point seeing some markings on one of the wooden bridges, but it looked like that had been replaced or mended. I don't have anything that stands out. It looked good the last time I was out there, but if anyone's been out there more recently.
Heading out to the Okanichi village, the the wooden bridge that goes over the creek, like right before you get to the Okinichi Village, there is one wooden slat that it's got 3 stooges on you. You step up and it pops up or goes down.
Yeah.
That's a county property, but I will contact the county Parks and Rec staff and let them know about it.
This is maybe outside the scope, but just speaking of that same bridge, just to put it out there, it's especially with more use and more people moving to the area and more people on the Riverwalk, that's a really narrow bridge. I don't know how the county feels or how we could work with them or something, but eventually it'd be really great to like widen that so that you could have
So
two directions.
There's another bridge just down from
Just
it.
past. And that's where I go usually if there's
Yeah, my
some running or
understand-
biking.
Yeah, my understanding is that in their master plan, the little bridge goes away, but I don't know when that's happening.
So it's a non-factor anyway. Yeah.
It was built, it's such a great little bridge though. You know, it's like
I
this
know.
teeny tiny Hillsborough scale swinging bridge. But yeah, I think in the master plan, it goes away because it's not accessible. Mhm.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. How about Turnip? Or I'm sorry, Turnip Patch Park.
Yeah, Turnip Patch has a new sculpture. Go and see them. They're wonderful. And we have a dead tree that'll be coming out at Turnip Patch. Not sure what happened to it, but it didn't make it. It didn't leave out this spring. But other than that, we're just working. All the parks right now are getting garden work. So Lindsay's out there, you know, pulling weeds and trimming stuff back. It's just that time of year. And then I'll just launch into staff updates after that. Let's see, what have I got here? Some recent park repairs that we've done. The Calvin Street Greenway had some more rotten boards that were replaced. Gold Park had some handrails that were rotten. Those have been replaced. I'm actually starting to replace those with hardy. With Trex. So the handrails in Gold Park were wood, and they're designed at a slant, and so they just get beat up by the sun and get beat up by the weather. So we're replacing the like handrails with Trex, just one board at a time. Eventually that whole section will be handrails of Trex. And that's a recycled plastic product for those of you who are unfamiliar with it. It's also nice for handrails because it doesn't splinter. So it's really good for little kids who like walk with their hands down the handrail. It's actually, in my opinion, that's the best use of Trex is for handrails. We already talked about the kayak launch and the community center. The last thing I'll say is that the bridge behind Bellevue Mill that is on the Mills trail system connecting over to Bellevue Street, that bridge construction starts tomorrow. And that is a town funded project. And it'll take us about a month, probably, you know, weather permitting. My experience is that every time I go under construction for a bridge, it starts to rain for 90 days. So get yourselves ready. It's going to start raining here pretty soon and keep us from building a bridge for the next couple months. But anyway, right now there's no way across that creek, but pretty soon there will be. And those are all the updates I have.
Awesome. Well, that about does it. I just wanted to officially say hello to Richard and see if you had any thoughts or questions or anything for us at all. And I'll start just by asking, by saying hello, and also asking where you are in Hillsborough and how long you've been here.
No sound.
Richard, if you can hear us, we think.
About now.
Yeah,
Yes.
we can hear you.
Good job, Richard.
I'm like, we started back at school, which is part of my story, but I'm back in school. And so I'm hopping on computers back and forth between, and I'm working out my software stuff. Rich von Furstenberg, I live in Cornwallis Hills. So kind of here on the, yeah, Rob, I heard you were from this area. and heard about the opening and wanted to investigate how the Parks Board worked. And I recently, after 20 years working in medical research, decided to go back and get my PhD in Parks and Rec. My particular focus is on wildlife conservation and decision-making around that, but I take a lot of coursework in TA class on making evidence-based decisions in Parks and Rec. So a lot of surveys, implementation, analysis, things like that. And I have 2 little children, and we really enjoy the parks around here. So I kind of wanted to like bring whatever I could to the table to help out. And yeah.
Awesome. That's great.
And we do try, with our membership to get people from all the different park districts. And of course, Rob lives in Cornwallis Hills, but doesn't count as a voting member. So Richard would be representing Cornwallis Hills again, because we actually don't have anyone else from Cornwallis Hills. Carl lives on Oakdale, which is very close, but it's actually not exactly in the same park district. So it's good. It's good.
Great. Well, anybody else have any questions or comments before we adjourn?
I guess I just have one more comment, because you know me, I always have one more comment. I just need to say that I've really appreciated you guys being so forgiving and flexible over the last year with like when we have meetings and when we don't. And it's, as you can imagine, it's just really, we're understaffed right now in the planning department in general. That may also go into the fall. So if you don't mind just keeping this date every month open, but if we have to cancel a meeting because of either my conflicts or schedule, or because I don't have the business ready for us to discuss this, I hope you guys continue to be as forgiving and kind as you've been over the last year. I don't know that we'll be able to meet every month this fall, but I just would hope that you would keep the meeting date open. And of course, I'll send out the agenda notices, ahead of time. And if that works for you guys, we'll just kind of keep that flexibility going for a little while. We'll continue to meet virtually until the state emergency order is lifted as well. Is that okay with everyone? Okay.
That sounds good to me. And that is the 3rd Tuesday, correct? Third
Yes.
Tuesday each month. I think everyone's pretty used to and understands all of the wild variables at this point, so no sweat. Well, thank you, everyone. I think that's it.
That's it. Thank you.
Nice meeting you all.
Bye. Nice to meet you, Richard. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Good job, Jesse. See y'all.
Thanks. Bye, Rob.